I walked into the bistro and knew, with a cold, sudden certainty, that I wasn't a guest. I was the mark. My parents' anniversary dinner was already a memory. Plates were stacked at the edge of the table, smudged with the ghosts of sauces. 2 empty wine bottles stood sentinel, and the air hummed with the expensive quiet that follows a satisfied feast. My mother looked up, her face softening into the gentle, practiced smile she reserved for requests. "Maya, darling, you made it," she said, her voice a feather-light brush of reproach. Then, the line, delivered like a familiar punchline in a private joke. "You'll settle the bill, won't you? We figured since you're the successful one." My brother, Leo, chuckled into his espresso, not a hint of shame, just idle amusement. And in that crystalline moment, I understood. I wasn't there to celebrate their 35 years. I was there to finance it. My name is Maya, I'm 32, and in the lexicon of my family, I have one defining trait: reliable. It was never a compliment. It was a job description. On the surface, we are picturesque. Robert and Evelyn Grant, the charming, gregarious couple who throw impeccable, if infrequent, garden parties. Leo, the charismatic younger son with a grin that disarms and a career path that mystifies. And me, the stable, sensible daughter in the tasteful neutral sweaters. Our holiday photos are masterpieces of coordinated warmth. But proximity isn't kinship. Kinship is measured in who is permitted to have needs and who is expected to quietly fill them. Leo has always occupied space like a conquering hero. His passions were urgent, his setbacks were crises, his desires were family agenda items. The universe bent his gravitational pull. I learned, early and well, that my peace was found in the margins. When I didn't complain, didn't demand, didn't cause a ripple, my father would nod approvingly. "Maya's our easygoing one," he'd say. "She gets it." Getting it became my identity, and by my late 20s, that identity came with a silent, recurring bill. It started small. "Can you cover the caterer for the Labor Day thing? We're a bit tight. Leo's car needs a repair, just front him for now. The roof fund is a little short this quarter." Each request was wrapped in the tissue paper of temporariness, each one quietly solidified into permanence. I never hid my career in finance, but I never flaunted it. I let them assume a modest, mid-level analyst role, something that explained my sensible apartment and lack of luxury brand logos. Their underestimation was a shield. It kept their envy at bay and their requests flowing freely. They adored milestones, not just anniversaries, but unbirthdays, promotions that weren't Tuesday victories. They adored restaurants with sommeliers and ambient jazz, places where the check arrived in a sealed leather folio, discreet and daunting. And mysteriously, my phone would ring after the reservation was locked in, after the menu was decided. The night of their anniversary, I came straight from closing a grueling deal, my mind still buzzing with numbers and clauses. I brought a gift, a restored vintage photo of them from their honeymoon, a tangible piece of their history. But as I stood there, surveying the landscape of their contentment, the clean plates, the relaxed postures, a familiar, cold knot tightened in my stomach. The whisper in my head was clear: "You know exactly what this is." I watched my mother's eyes dart, almost imperceptibly, to the black folio near the floral centerpiece. I watched my father settle deeper into his chair, sated. I watched Leo text, a smirk playing on his lips, utterly detached. They weren't awaiting my company. They were awaiting my function. For the first time, instead of the automatic, weary acceptance, a new question formed: what if the machine breaks down? I took the empty seat, the one without the draped cashmere scarf. The air was rich with garlic and reduced wine. My mother sighed, a sound of pure, performed contentment. "You really missed out, sweetheart. The scallops were divine." My father nodded, patting his stomach. "A masterpiece." Leo didn't glance up. "We got you the bread pudding." "Well, most of it." A server materialized, placing the folio directly in front of my setting. It sat there, a dark, unequivocal period at the end of their sentence. My mother tilted her head, the picture of benign expectation. "You don't mind, do you? We thought, with your year-end bonus." She let the assumption hang, fragrant and suffocating. Leo finally looked up, his gaze bouncing from the folio to my face. "Don't stress," he said, grinning. "You're a pro at this stuff." He said pro like it was a synonym for sucker. The word didn't sting, it illuminated. I scanned their faces. My father studied the wine list as if for the first time. My mother's benevolent smile was fixed in place. Leo was already lost in his screen again. And in that suspension, a dam of clarity broke. I saw the past year not as bad luck or poor timing, but as a blueprint, the text that always arrived as the first course was being served, the family meetings that were actually financial briefings, the way my calendar was an afterthought. Tonight's summons had been a classic, asterisk at La Bellevue. "Join us when you're free." Asterisk, not an invitation. A summons to duty. They hadn't left me a seat at the table. They'd left me a station. This wasn't about love or lack thereof. It was about a cultivated, unshakable certainty. They were certain I would come, certain I would pay, certain I would swallow any discomfort to maintain the smooth, glossy veneer of our family portrait. That certainty was the foundation of their comfort. I reached for my water glass, took a slow, deliberate sip, and let the silence stretch. I didn't protest. I didn't sigh. I didn't perform my usual resigned acquiescence. Because I finally understood, this was not a series of unfortunate events. It was an ecosystem. And ecosystems don't change through negotiation. They change when a vital resource is removed. I paid the bill that night. Not from obligation, not from fear, but for proof. I needed one final, irrefutable data point for the case I was building in my own mind. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and hollow silence. My phone chimed once. A text from my mother. Asterisk, thank you for taking care of that, Maya. We can always rely on you. Asterisk, no kiss, no warmth. Just a confirmation of service rendered. Home was a different universe. My partner, Ben, was reading on the couch. He looked up as I entered, took in my expression, and wordlessly went to make tea. I didn't sit. I went in my home office, booted up my laptop, and opened the spreadsheet I'd morbidly titled Household. I scrolled. Dinner at Il Piacere. The impromptu weekend at the Vineyard. Leo's loan for his failed startup idea. The quarterly contributions to my parents' lifestyle fund. Each line item alone was justifiable, a droplet of family loyalty. Together, they formed a sea I was drowning in. It wasn't support. It was subsidization. Ben entered, placing a mug of chamomile beside me. He didn't ask. He just waited. They didn't even wait for me to sit down, I said, my voice strangely flat. They haven't needed to in a long time, he replied, his hand a steady weight on my shoulder. I told him about Leo's pro comment. Ben's eyes tightened. That's what people say when they've forgotten you have a choice. I stared at the glowing numbers, the cold, hard evidence of my own complicity. This ends, I stated, the words feeling solid and final in my mouth. Ben simply nodded. Do you want to call Meredith first? Meredith was my financial advisor, a woman of steel and spreadsheets. No, I said, closing the laptop lid. The talking is done. The plan formed not in a flash of anger, but in a slow, steady thaw. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't accuse. I wouldn't give a grand speech. I would simply stop being the engine of their economy. And I knew the moment I stepped off the treadmill, the entire machine would shudder to a halt. I didn't send a manifesto. I didn't change my number. I let the momentum of their expectation carry them forward, blissfully unaware that the safety net had been removed. 3 weeks later, the text came. Asterisk, making up for the rushed anniversary. Dinner at La Bellevue Friday. Leo's bringing that lovely girl he's seeing. Be there. Asterisk, a command, not an invitation. I typed back, asterisk, see you then. Asterisk. When I arrived, the scene was a perfect replica. The same soft lighting, the same hostess with the sympathetic eyes. My parents were glowing. Leo was holding court, his new girlfriend, Chloe, hanging on his every word. My mother touched my wrist as I Saturday, there's our girl. We ordered the tasting menu. You'll love it. I smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile that seemed to confuse her for a second. The meal was a symphony of familiar moves. Wine was poured. Extravagant dishes were presented and devoured. My father held forth on politics. Leo and Chloe shared bites of food, a performance of young love. My mother orchestrated it all, the satisfied conductor. The check was never mentioned, but its future presence hung in the air, a ghost we all acknowledged and ignored. When the cheese course was cleared, I caught our server's eye, a young man named Sam who'd served us before. I gave a slight, deliberate nod. He looked uncertain, then approached, placing the leather folio carefully at the table's center. The conversation didn't stop, but it dimmed. My mother glanced at it, then at me, her expression fond. "Whenever you're ready, dear." I did not reach for it. Instead, I stood up. "I'll be right back. I need to speak with the maitre d'." A fork clinked against china. Leo paused mid-sentence. "What for?" "Just a question about the reservation," I said, my tone light as air. The maitre d', a meticulous man named Antoine, approached with a polite curiosity. I stepped slightly aside, pitching my voice low but leaving it audible enough to be an unsettling murmur at my family's table. "Antoine, hello. Maya Grant. Could you just confirm for me the status of the house account linked to my parents' reservations? I believe there may have been an administrative change." He consulted his tablet, his brow furrowing slightly. Yes, Ms. Grant. I see here. The previous standing authorization was cancelled as per your email. The balance is settled. Tonight's dining would be a separate transaction." My mother's chair scraped. "What authorization? What does that mean?" Antoine turned, polite but professional. "It means the house account is closed, madam. The check for tonight's service is ready for whichever method of payment you prefer." The silence was absolute, a vacuum sucking the air from the room. My father blinked. "There must be a mistake. It's always taken care of." "Not tonight, sir," Antoine said gently. My mother's eyes locked onto mine, her warmth evaporating. "Maya." I met her gaze steady. "I won't be paying for dinner tonight, Mom." Leo barked a laugh. "Okay, hilarious bit. Very edgy." "I'm not joking, Leo." My father's face flushed. "What is this? Some kind of tantrum?" "It's a boundary," I said, sitting back down, folding my napkin in my lap. "I've been subsidizing a lifestyle, your lifestyle, for years. That ends now." My mother's voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "You're doing this here? To humiliate us?" "I'm not doing anything to you," I said calmly. "I'm simply ceasing to do for you." Leo scoffed. "After all we've given you?" "Family supports family." I looked at him, really looked, seeing past the charming facade to the profound entitlement beneath. "Support goes two ways, Leo. What you've given me is a lesson. In this family, affection is transactional. I'm opting out of the market." Chloe looked between us, horrified. Leo placed a hand on her arm. "Babe, maybe give us a minute?" She practically fled. Antoine, sensing the nuclear fallout, interjected softly. "Shall I prepare separate checks?" "Yes," I said, before anyone else could speak. "One for my parents, one for my brother and his guest, and one for me." Asterisk separate, asterisk, my mother gasped, as if I'd suggested we eat off the floor. "Financially, Evelyn," I said, using her first name for the first time in my life, "we already are." The checks arrived. Mine was a single slip. Theirs were a small novel of line items. My mother stared at hers, her hands beginning to shake. I don't have my proper card with me." "I know," I said quietly. I'd seen this play before, the feigned helplessness that always preceded my rescue. My father fumbled for his wallet, his confidence shattered. He looked old. For the first time, they weren't the assured patriarch and matriarch. They were two people facing a bill they couldn't charm their way out of. My mother's eyes, when she lifted them to me, were shards of ice. "You're proud of yourself." "No," I said, and it was the truth. "I'm free." They paid, piece by painful piece, with whispers and flushed necks. I laid my card down smoothly, signed, and stood. As I turned to leave, my mother said my name. Not Maya, darling, or Maya, stop. Just Maya. A single, stark word filled with a bewildered, furious loss. I didn't turn back. Outside, the night air was crisp, scented with city rain and possibility. I knew the siege was coming. The guilt-tripping calls, the wounded texts, the narratives of betrayal they'd spin for relatives. But the cornerstone of their system, my reliable subsidy, was gone. The architecture would crumble. And it did. Not with a bang, but with a slow, relentless deflation. The lavish dinners ceased. Leo's big plans suddenly required real investors. My parents' perpetual summer of leisure acquired a budgetary winter. The calls came, of course. Waves of them. Pleading, then angry, then bitterly passive-aggressive. I answered when I chose, with a calm, unyielding no. I didn't justify, argue, defend, or explain. My favorite sentence became, "That doesn't work for me." The guilt I had feared, the monumental sorrow for the family I thought I was losing, never arrived. In its place was a profound, steadying peace. I hadn't lost a family. I had shed a financial and emotional parasite. I began to enjoy my own life, the life I funded, the time I owned, the choices that were truly mine. Ben and I planned a trip, just for us, with no emergency call from home waiting to drain the fund. I didn't cut them off. I leveled the field. And in the strange new silence, something unexpected happened. I started to remember things I liked about them, from a distance. My father's dry wit when he wasn't performing. My mother's genuine skill in the garden. Even Leo's infectious, if manipulative, enthusiasm. I didn't know if we'd ever have a real relationship again, but if we did, it would have to be built on new ground where I was a person, not a pipeline. The restaurant became a legend, a before and after marker in my personal history. The lesson was tattooed on my soul: boundaries are not acts of war. They are the foundations of selfhood. And when you stop paying for the privilege of your own neglect, the silence that follows isn't empty. It's full of you. If you have ever been the designated anchor, the silent bank, the one who is called not to share joy, but to settle the cost of it, hear this. Your reliability is a virtue, not a vulnerability to be exploited. Stopping is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of creation, the creation of your own life, on your own terms. You are allowed to be more than the answer to someone else's problem. You are allowed to close the account.